Have you ever seen a neighborhood torn apart not by outsiders, not by strangers, but by one of their own? Someone who wore the mask of authority while hiding the heart of a tyrant? Because that's exactly what happened to us, and it all began with a fort, a child's simple creation in a backyard that became the spark for a war of intimidation, betrayal, and ultimately justice that would test every ounce of strength we had. Arthur called a special meeting, owners allowed to observe as long as they stayed quiet. So Paul and I hugged the back wall, watching as Arthur's voice remained steady. Quorum present. Motion to remove Karen Dunn for conduct harmful to the association. The accountant read a memo. Keep her, and the insurance carrier drops coverage. That landed like a brick. The vote was swift, even her last ally staring at his shoes before switching sides. The gavel struck Dunn. Fear left the room like smoke through a vent. But while the criminal trial for Karen was a slow-moving train, our battle was civil, personal, about medical bills, trauma, and holding her accountable in ways the state never could. Our lawyer, BenCarter.com, and methodical, explained that the burden of proof in a civil case wasn't beyond a reasonable doubt, just preponderance of evidence. And given the mountain we had, he was confident. The trial took place in a small, modern courtroom, less intimidating than criminal court, but heavier with meaning. Karen appeared, no longer in her sharp power suits, but in a plain gray suit. Smaller, diminished, stripped of authority, sitting beside her lawyer, eyes downcast. Ben began with the HOA bylaws, showing that while rules existed for structures, none gave Karen authority to personally cut down property, proving she hadn't just been malicious, but had acted far outside her role. He showed the jury the doorbell camera footage, silent gasps filling the room as the fort collapsed on Evan. He played the deputy's body cam audio, where Karen admitted to cutting it. Flimsy excuses shouted into the void. Witnesses like Mrs. Gwyn.com and Grandmotherly testified with quiet conviction, while text messages revealed Karen's financial motives, building a wall of evidence brick by brick. But here's the hook. The most devastating blow came from Evan himself. Not live, but through a recorded deposition, where, with his red cast propped on a stool, he answered in his small voice, "Me and my Uncle Mark built it. It was Fort Kickbutt, the best fort ever." When asked what happened, his smile faded, his eyes lowered. The shaky lady came. She cut the leg. It fell on me. It hurt a lot. The jury, hardened adults, wiped tears from their cheeks. The defense scrambled, arguing, stress, unsafe design, even negligence on my part. But the jury saw through it. Closing arguments rang like a hammer. This was not an accident. This was a choice. Her choice. Now it is yours to choose justice. Less than an hour later, the verdict was in liability confirmed. Damages awarded, $150,000 medical, $500,000. Pain and suffering, $1 million, punitive. The gasp in the room said it all. Karen slumped, her empire collapsed. But here's the hook. Winning in court wasn't the end, because the hole in our yard, the scar on Evan's leg, and the fracture in our community still needed mending. That's when the rebuilding began. The next morning, clearing debris, I expected just Evan and me, but Paul showed up with his saw, Buddy Bruno with his wheelbarrow full of concrete, the young mother from the board with her kids, and Mrs. Gwyn with lemonade and cookies. Then more neighbors came, each carrying tools, lumber, or simply goodwill, until the project became ours, not mine. We dug deeper holes, set posts in concrete, tightened steel bolts donated by deputies who raised money, saying they wanted to give back something good. Even off-duty Torres showed up with a smile and a box of hardware, while Rocket, the German Shepherd, played ball with the kids. Evan, too small to lift, became chief inspector, sitting in a chair with a toy hard hat, declaring, "That board is super straight. And good job, Buddy Bruno. That concrete is very concretey." His approval became the badge be worked for. By evening, the new fort stood tall, painted fire-engined red, as Evan chose, the last plank signed by his hand before I bolted it into place with Torres's donated steel. When Evan climbed up the rope ladder and shouted, "Thank you," the cheer that erupted wasn't about wood or nails, it was about resilience, about unity, about reclaiming joy from fear. And here's the hook. This wasn't just a fort, it was a monument. A testament to how communities heal stronger when they refuse to bow to cruelty. Seasons turned, leaves gold, then snow capped the fort like a crown. Evan's cast came off. Therapy made him stronger. His nightmares faded into stories he told friends with a grin. The HOA found stability under Arthur, fair and boring, which was perfect. Karen's house sold to a young family, their children racing bikes with Evan, laughter echoing where tension once ruled. But life has a way of offering quiet tests. One spring day, in a hardware store aisle, I looked up to see her Karen done. No longer fierce, just tired, gray at the temples, holding paint thinner. For a moment, the past crackled between us, like static. No speeches, no anger, just a nod from her, a nod from me, and I turned back to my screws, walking away without looking back. That's when I realized justice isn't always thunderous. Sometimes it's the quiet that remains, the absence of fear, the calm after the storm. And yet, here's the final hook. This story isn't really about Karen. It's about us, about how far you go to protect family, to stand your ground, to gather proof, to weather intimidation, and to rise stronger. It's about sanding down the edge of a shelf, handing a child screws for a simple project, and knowing that when someone tries to tear down your life, you fight, you rebuild, and in the end, you discover that true justice lives not in verdicts, but in peace, community, and the sound of children laughing beneath a fort built stronger than ever before.